stop. If you're a student or teacher, this lesson could change how you understand digital technology. My name is Roland Obo. Welcome to Roland Tech Academy, where we make digital technology simple from Basic 1 to SS3. Stay with me till the end and you understand this topic better than ever before.
Welcome to today's digital technology class. In today's class, you'll be looking at data and information. So I remain your instructor, Roland Obo. So this topic is specifically for students in Basic 7. So if you are in Basic 7, this topic is for you. But notwithstanding, students in other classes or instructors, teachers can also benefit because it's a detailed lesson. But following the Nigerian curriculum, this lesson is basically for Basic 7 students. So what will we learn today? At the end of this lesson, you should be able to define data and information, identify types of data, recognize sources of data, and be able to apply everything you've learned today in the real world assessment. Okay. Now, before I proceed, have you ever asked someone what his or her name is? Have you ever asked someone how old the person is? Have you ever asked someone what's the person's favorite color? And if you have asked such question, automatically you've gotten data from someone somehow. Okay? If you've asked a friend, what's your name? How old are you? What class are you? What's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? If you have asked such questions, automatically you've gotten data, you've collected data from your friend. Okay, so that leads us to the definition of data. Data refers to raw, unorganized facts, figures, or details that have not yet been processed or given meaning. So whenever you hear the word data, what comes to your mind is that data is raw facts, raw, unorganized. So when we say something is raw, something is unorganized, that means it has not been processed. It has no context, it has no meaning on its own. So that's what happens to data. Data refers to raw, unorganized facts, figures, or details that have not yet been processed or given meaning. For instance, if I should write 20 on the board, 20 automatically it's a data. Now, what does that mean? You don't know. Who knows what 20 means? Who knows if this 20 is the number of students in the class? Who knows if 20 is the number of students in the school? Who knows if 20 is the score a child has scored in his or her CA? So at this point, 20 has no meaning. So that automatically makes 20 a data. Now I write something again, a boy. It is just a data. It has no meaning. What happened to the boy? I just wrote boy. What happened to the boy? So automatically, these two examples tells us what data is like. So data refers to raw and unorganized facts, figures, or details that have not yet been processed. This 20 has not yet been processed. You cannot pass any meaningful information at this point. Same thing goes to boy. Because the word boy hasn't been processed, it has no meaning on its own. Data on its own does not tell a complete story. It's very clear now. Data on its own cannot tell a complete story. So if I say Roland, what happened to Roland? That's the first question that comes to your mind. What happened to Roland? Is Roland a boy? Is Roland a man? Is Roland a teacher? What happens to Roland? Okay, so this word alone is not complete because it doesn't pass a complete message to the audience. Data on its own is not complete. It needs to be organized, it needs to be interpreted before it becomes useful. So whenever I get the data, maybe you've collected scores or number, or you've asked your friend how old are you, and he or she tells you, because you can either tell them, oh, my friend is 22 years old. Yes, that's a complete statement now. That has become information, okay, which we will also look at the meaning of information as we proceed. So, example of data, just as I have earlier mentioned, data are raw facts. Okay, so in this case, you see a student test score 85. The temperature today is 32 degrees Celsius. A person's name, Amina is the person's name. The color of a car, red. Number of students in class, we have 30. So all these are example of data. 55 tells you the number of students in the class is this, or this student scored this. Okay, so 85 itself is a data meaningless now, meaningless. But we are looking at the example of data now. So can easily say student test score, which is 85. This is not in this case now. This is not the data. We are not looking at this now. We are looking at the data itself. So the data here now is the 85. Today's temperature is 32 degrees Celsius, which is this is also the data. A person's name, Amina, favor, gifted, love, yes, all those are what data. Now the color of a car is red. When we get to types of data, you get to know how these data are being categorized. Okay, so the color of a car is red. Red here also is data. Number of students in class, we have 30. So in a very simple term, 35 is the data, 32 degrees Celsius is the data, Amina is the data, red is the data, 30 also is the data. Data can be numbers, words, symbols, images, sounds, or even videos. So when it comes to data now, data is not limited. It could be numbers, it could be words, it could be images, it could be videos. So data can be, this is data, could be numbers. Okay, so whenever you're doing the like alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, all these are also what? Data. So data can also be images. I did ask in my school. All right. So now this also is data. Videos you watch, movies you watch, also data. Sound, even the sounds you make. Right now I'm talking, you're hearing me. So the sound that comes from my mouth now is automatically data. Okay. I can also, if I'm pronouncing 30, can you see the 30 is a sound? Okay. So you know that 30 is also a data. Now, what is information? What is information? Since you've known that data is unprocessed, so automatically information is the opposite of data. So if data is unprocessed, automatically information is processed. Okay, so information is data that has been processed, organized, or structured in a way that makes it meaningful and useful. Okay, so remember, information is gotten from data. So that is why in our definition here we say information is data. But there are things you need to look out for. Here it is being processed, organized, structured. Okay, so that makes it meaningful now because it's being processed, number one, it's being organized, number two, and it's being structured in a way that it makes it meaningful and useful. Now, when data is analyzed and given context, it becomes information that helps us make decisions. So you now imagine seeing something on the board, let's say seeing something like, what decision would you make with this? You can't do anything because this is the data, unprocessed, no meaning, no context. But if you should see something meaningful on the board, the boys are brilliant. Yes. So that means automatically, wow, this person has passed an information. So that means I'm gonna make my decision based on this information. All the boys are brilliant, automatically I am going to reward the boys in this class. So that alone has enabled you to pass or to carry or to establish a decision. Okay, so things you should look out for are what information must be processed, information must be organized, information must be structured in a way that it makes whatever you're doing meaningful and useful. Now, there are stages in processing data to information. Before data becomes useful, before data is being converted to information, it must pass through processes. So the processes are, number one is the data input. So you've collected the data, you've collected it into now. What's your name? My name is Roland. How old are you? I'm 10 years old. What class are you? I'm in basic 7, Ruby, Go, Diamond, depending on the class you are. Those are information. So the interviewer now is collecting those information from the student, which is the input stage. Now the processing stage, the interviewer would now have to organize the data, sort the data, and analyze those data he or she had collected in order to do what? To convert it to a meaningful information. And after processing, it becomes an information. It can be sent out as an output. So information data must pass through 3 stages for it to be a qualified information. Number one is the input, the processing, and the output. Now, key difference. Data is the raw material, while information is the finished product. Data is the raw material. When we say raw material, you should know that anything raw material means something that cannot be consumed. Yes, you cannot consume because it has not passed through a processing stage. For instance, we process cassava to garri. Okay, so for cassava to be turned to a finished product, it must pass through different stages, different processes. You go to the farm, you harvest the cassava, peel it, wash it, grind it, dry it, shift it, fry it, then it becomes garri. So the same thing happens to information. Before information it becomes useful, it passes through the stages we have earlier mentioned. Then now the difference is when you harvest the cassava, it is automatically raw, nothing consumable about it. It is until it has passed through the processes needed for it to become a finished product before you can consume it. Okay, same thing happens to information. The difference between data and information is data is raw, information is processed. Okay, so it is after information is being processed, it becomes a finished product that does what helps us understand something and take action. We look at types of data. Data is grouped into two main types. Each type tells us something different and is used in different ways. So basically, we have two major types of data. Data is classified into two major types. Okay, so number one here is the qualitative data, and the number two is the quantitative data. So I'm going to break each of the types down now. Qualitative data are data that describe qualities or characteristics. So when we say data that describes quality or characteristics, what does it mean? So let's say you are giving out data to someone, and then you are asked your name. So your name is Roland, your state of origin, Abuja, your place of birth. All those kind of data you are giving out are classified under qualitative data because they describe things about you or they tell us things related to you now in what? Natural language. So when we say natural language, what I'm talking about, we're talking about words. Okay, so qualitative data type are data that does what describe qualities or characters. Now, it cannot be measured with numbers. So whenever you hear qualitative data, it has nothing to do with numbers. It is not quantitative. Okay, quality, quantity, quality. So then how quality is this thing? How good is this thing? Okay, how good is the thing? What are the characteristics of this particular person we are talking about? So when you are collecting qualitative data, it does not quantify, it only qualify. Same color of a flower is yellow, this is a qualitative data. Student's opinion, I like math. Yeah, that is an opinion now. So in words, it's automatically a qualitative data. Now type of fruit, mango is a fruit. It's an example of fruit. So you can say mango in words automatically is a qualitative type of data. Texture smooth, automatically it's a qualitative type of data. So knowing that qualitative data describes quality and or characteristics. So data that can be measured and expressed in numbers are classified under quantitative type of data. Okay, so data that can be measured and expressed in numbers, it answers questions like how many, what's the quantity. So whenever you hear a question like how much, how many, all those set of data falls under quantitative type of data. So how much, weight 150 centimeter, 13 years, weight 45 kilograms, score 78 marks. So now the 78, 45, 13, 150 are classified under quantitative type of data. Quantitative data, as we have explained, is subdivided into two. Understanding this helps you know how to collect, and use numerical data correctly. Now, number one is the discrete data type. Discrete data type. Now, when we say discrete data, what does it mean? There are data that can only take specific separate values, usually whole numbers. So you cannot have a value. So discrete numbers are numbers that are whole numbers. 30 is a whole number. Now, when we say 30.5, that has automatically become a float point number. Discrete types of data takes only specific separate values, no float point added to it, nothing else, just a round figure. It could be 100, it could be 50, it could be 30, it could be 20, no float point. Okay, no float point. So example here, we have a number of students in the class 30. There is nowhere you can have 30.5 students in the class. It's not possible. There's no way you can have 20.2 students in the class as number of students in your class now. Your classmates, how many are in your class, and you tell somebody we are 18.2. It doesn't work that way now. Numbers that are complete, okay, they are classified as discrete data. Number of books on a shelf. Imagine your parents bought books for you. Is there any way your parents will buy 5.5 books for you, or 2.5 books for you? So they must buy. If they're buying three, they buy three exercise books for you. If they're buying four, they buy four exercise books for you. Okay. So another example that interests me here is goal scored in a match. I love football. I've been watching football, but I think all through my history of watching football, playing football, I've not seen where someone scored 9.2 goals. It's not possible now. Somebody scored 9.2 goals. It's not possible. So it's either you score 2 goals, 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, and so on. Continuous data, which is another example of data. Continuous data, they are data that can take any value within a range. Data that can take any value within a range. So in this case now, that's when we now have float points. Float point can automatically come in. So it could be 2.5, 3.5. Like if you're measuring your temperature, you could easily say the temperature for today is 32.5 degrees Celsius, 82 points. So the float point now automatically makes it a continuous data because it does not just stop at the original figure now. It has a float point. Okay, so data that can take any value within range. So whenever you're looking at continuous data, then float point should come to your mind. Point one, point two, point three, point five. Okay, so I have some set of students whenever I'm giving them CA. If they score, if there's a float point in their score, they always follow me on that. I should round it up. Okay, so they don't want float point number. Now if they have 5.5, they want me to make it 6. Do you understand? So they don't want a continuous data. They do want a discrete kind of data. Discrete has to do with whole number, while continuous data has to do with what float point. Now, if you can count it, it's automatically discrete. If you can measure it, it's automatically continuous. So this is a quick tip on how to differentiate or distinguish between the both. If you can count it, discrete. If you can measure it, continuous. Can you count height? You cannot count height. Rather, you measure height. Can you measure number of students in the class? No, you cannot measure. Rather, you count to get the total number of students in the class. You measure to know a particular height of a particular person or a particular student. Okay, so if you can count it, keep this at the back of your mind. Not at the back of your mind. No, I don't like back of your mind. So if you can count it automatically, it's discrete. If you can measure it, it's continuous. Now, another important subtopic we will look at is the sources of data. Now, when we say sources, what does it mean? Places where you can find data, where data can be collected, where can you go to organize data? Okay, so sources. When we say sources, it's automatically where you can have access to those data or information or whatever you're looking for. Okay, so in this case, data can be collected from many places. Yes, data can be collected from many places, many places. These sources are grouped into two main categories. Now, because you can go to Abuja and collect data, go to Cross River and collect data, go to Akwa Ibom and collect data, go to Lagos and collect data, go to church, go to mosque, go to everywhere. to collect data. So if we are if we want to go by categorizing all these places, it will be a lot for us. So we divide it into two different sources now. So number one is the primary sources. We have primary source. Now, data collected directly from the original source by the researcher. It is first-hand information. Now, let me bring this in. Maybe you've ever gone to buy something and they tell you this one is second-hand, this one is first-hand. Okay, so the first-hand tells you nobody have used this thing before. You are the first person that is buying this. So that means if you buy the first hand product, that means it's coming from a primary source. But if you buy the second hand, it's coming from a secondary source, which is another major source of data. The primary source tells us that it comes directly from its original source. It could be the researcher. The information is coming from its original source. Okay, so we have a survey. So maybe you're carrying out a survey, that is a primary source of the data. Your interviews and observations, experiments and tests, census data collection. So these are primary source of gathering information. What any information that is gotten from this listed sources are automatically primary source of data. So no second, and no one have used the information before. So maybe you've ever attended an interview somewhere, it could be embassy, even before you were admitted your school, you were asked some certain question. So the person asking you the question and the interviewer is getting the information directly from you. So you are the primary source now. So when it is your parents or your dad, your mom, your elderly ones that are giving information about you, so automatically that information is coming from a secondary source, not from its original source. Okay. Number two type of a source of data is what? Secondary sources. Being that we have explained primary sources, I believe secondary should be very simple for you to understand. Secondary data sources, data that has already been collected by someone else. So this set of data are data that has already been collected by someone else. So they are being stored somewhere for you to have access to. These data are under secondary sources because you are not getting them from their original source. Okay, someone came say, okay, do you know what my mom told me? My mom said when I pass my exam, she'll buy me this. So you are getting that information from a secondary source, not from the person's mom. The person's mom automatically is this primary source, while the person coming to tell you now has become a secondary source of that particular information. For example, we have textbooks and encyclopedia. So if you have ever used a textbook to get the meaning of a thing or encyclopedia, that means you are making use of a secondary source of data because someone gathered the data somewhere and then document it. The internet and website, you go to internet, you browse, you search for things on the internet. Secondary source of data. Someone put those information there. So the person has gone somewhere, made his or her research, got those information, store them on the internet for you to have access to. Now, government reports, most times you see on social media, people coming to tell us, even on the television, governments are giving reports of things that are happening. Now, you are not getting those information directly from the government, but from a secondary source. A news broadcaster that is there talking at that moment is a secondary source because he or she had already gotten the information from the government officials, just coming to tell you what he or she has gotten. So information from textbook is a secondary source of information, internet and website, government reports, and even newsletters and journals. So every information that comes from these four sources automatically categorized or referred to as secondary source information or data. In our definition, we said data are raw, unorganized facts and figures that on their own has no meaning. Okay, so you can say data equals to raw, unorganized fact. No meaning at all. It has no meaning. It has no meaning. Okay. Now moving to information. Information is processed, meaningful data. But the funny thing is that information depends on data for it to be meaningful. Information automatically depends on data for it to be meaningful. Without data, no meaningful information. Okay, so data is not dependent, but information is dependent. See the good thing. So data is still the baba here now. Okay, so information process meaningful data, but it depends on data for it to be meaningful. So we move to types of data. We mention qualitative data and we mention quantitative data. So whenever you hear qualitative, it means descriptive. So it automatically words. Okay, so qualitative has to do with words. Okay, qualitative has to do with words, while quantitative has to do with numbers. Okay, quantitative numbers, qualitative words. A subcategory of quantitative data, which we mentioned, discrete, counted values, continuous, measured values. Remember, if you can count, discrete. If you can measure, continuous. Can you still remember that? Okay, move to the sources of data. Okay, so we said the number one source of data is the primary source, where you get the data from its original source. Okay, you talk to me, you ask me a question, I'm responding to the question. So automatically you are getting the direct data from me. Now you're going to store that information somewhere for people to access. Whoever accesses that information is getting access to a secondary source of data. So the person did not come to me, you came to me, I gave you the data, you store it somewhere, someone else is accessing the data. So it automatically, I am the primary source giving it to you now, and then whoever is getting the information from you, you have automatically become a secondary source. Okay, so that is how it works. Primary, secondary, starting from data raw and unorganized, to information processed meaningful, to types qualitative and quantitative, move to discrete, continuous, primary and secondary. Okay, and evaluation, define the term data. From what we said from the beginning of this lesson, you should be able to define data. What is the difference between data and information? I also asked to give two examples of each of qualitative and quantitative data. That shouldn't be a problem. So all you have to do is put your answer on the comment section. I will access it and score you. Then there's one important thing I like doing at the end of my lesson, which is this take home assignment. Okay, so collect 5 pieces of data from your home or school, classify each as qualitative or quantitative. So you know what that means. You gather the information. Now look at it with the knowledge you've gained today on qualitative and quantitative data. So you have to classify each of those data. Is this a qualitative data? What makes it a qualitative data? Is this a quantitative data? What makes it a quantitative data? Okay, now question 2. For any quantitative data, state whether it is discrete or continuous. Now remember, if you can count, discrete. If you can measure, continuous. So we have come to the end of today's lesson on the topic data and information. If this lesson has helped you, if you found this lesson interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this lesson with other students so they could also benefit. Thank you. See you in our next class.
If this lesson helped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with another student. This is Roland Obo from Roland Tech Academy. See you in the next class.